Welcome to the Widowed Parent Podcast with your host, Jenny Lisk.
Hey everyone, it's Jenny Lisk, and this is episode 20 of the Widowed Parent Podcast. I had such a great discussion with Randah Taher for this episode, and today marks a first for the podcast, the first global episode, as Randah joined us from her home in Dubai in the United Arab Emirates. I loved hearing Randah's journey and her perspective on losing her dad when she was in college, including the impact that has had on her life. She says that after her dad died, she became motivated to be a better person and to show her dad what she was capable of. Some other topics Randah and I discussed include how missing her dad's funeral made her grief process harder, how she ultimately forgave family members for their actions around the time of her dad's death, realizing who her real friends were after her dad died, and the analogy of the egg, the carrot, and the coffee bean, and how she chose to transform after her loss. I should add, the audio quality of this episode is a bit, shall we say, variable. Maybe that's what happens when you talk with someone halfway around the world. You may hear some loud and soft variation in the beginning. Stick with it, it does get better later on. I hope you enjoy my discussion with Randah Taher. My guest today is Randah Taher, who is joining us from her home in Dubai. Randah, welcome.
Thank you. Welcome, Jenny. Thank you very much.
So I'm really glad to be talking with you today and bringing our discussion to listeners. Because some of the most fascinating interviews I think that I've done so far have been with other adults who lost a parent when they were young. Maybe a child or a teenager. And it's a perspective that I wouldn't otherwise be getting, and I feel like it helps me understand some of the issues that my kids might face at some point. And I know you were a little bit older, you were in college when your dad died, but I think you have such an interesting story, and I'm really looking forward to hearing your perspective and your reflections that you can share with us today. So again, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Jenny.
I'd like to ask you to start, if you don't mind, please, just by set the stage for us a little bit. I'd love to hear a little bit about before your life changed. What was your life like? Where were you living? What were you doing? Just kind of tell us about you.
Yes, sure. So my father or my parents were actually living in Saudi Arabia when I was born. My dad was the general manager of a factory there. I had a happy childhood. I had an easy childhood. I was a spoiled girl, and we had like good summer travels. We had good, different like everything was available for us in more or less. We were not wealthy in terms of extremely wealthy, but we didn't need, we were not struggling. So it was a good childhood. So this is one part. The other part is that I had a father who was more than just a father for me. He was like my best friend, my brother, my everything. Like I would go and tell him things that happened to me that I love, and I would also confess to him things that I shouldn't be confessing to a parent, right? I'm sorry, I did this, and he was very open, he was very welcoming. He would take things, he would accept me the way I am. I was a very stubborn child in addition to being spoiled. So being stubborn, it means I would do things for no other reason than just to, piss someone off. So it could be this simple. And then I think I only learned his lessons. He was a very wise man, and I only learned his lessons way after, I left home, and even more after he died. That's when I realized. So one of the things I will tell you, two things that he always used to say. One was a sentence to tell me that you can do it, right? You can do it and you're up to it. So that was a sentence that was made of just 2 words in Arabic. Oh, backtracking. So my father is from Palestinian origin. I'm Canadian, but he left Palestine to study in Austria. And he worked in Austria and Germany for 16 years before moving to Saudi Arabia.
Wow. Okay.
He was a man. Yeah, he had lots of experience. He spoke 3 languages fluently. Fourth was, French. He started to learn after his 60s because he was preparing to move to Canada, to Montreal specifically. So he started to learn French in his early 60s. So for me, that was very different than other other parents or other older men, older generation, and coming from a person who was very introvert. And also I realized that he was an introvert later in my life. So going back to what he used to tell me, you're up to it and you can always do it. It's a 2-word sentence in Arabic that I even wrote it somewhere to remind me always that this is what he believed in me. And the other one...
I'm sorry, can I interrupt you for 1 second? I think the microphone got a little bit quiet there.
Oh, is it better now?
Yeah, that's better.
Okay. All right. Let me know if you need anything, just let me know. So there was a word that he kept on telling me, you can do it and you're up to it. And there's another thing that he used to say, you are stubborn, but if you use it, like stubborn people are intelligent when they use it. Like if you put a goal in your mind and then you become stubborn, then nothing will stop you. Mm. And of course, I did not see this at that time. I saw it way much later and said, you know what, I am stubborn and I am going to use it for my own advantage. So this is what was, I think this is what my life was before.
Okay. And then you went to college. And so yes. Where did you go to college?
Yeah. So for college, I left at 17 and I went to Jordan. Mm. So I studied in Jordan. I studied 3 years. And then my dad died. So he died when I was 20. Okay. And I was, it was my last semester at college.
Mm. Okay. And can I ask, how was it? Was it an expected death or was it sudden? Was it a surprise?
It was definitely a surprise. So my dad had heart problems all his life. All my family from my father's side had a heart problem, but he had a minor heart attack while at work, and he went to the hospital, and he stayed there for 2 nights in the hospital, and, just to monitor him, make sure everything is okay. And he was supposed to be released on the morning after those 2 nights. And he even asked for his shaving kit from my mom, bring it to the hospital because I need to be ready. He had to look good, right? So I'll be ready. And then when she went, so he calls her maybe 6 in the morning or something like that. And then she was getting ready to go to the hospital. When she arrived to the hospital, he was already moved to ER because he was having his second heart attack. And that was the one.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Okay.
So all the time, so my mom and my 2 of my sisters were there. We're 4 of us. So 2 of my sisters were there. Me and my other sister we were in Jordan, different cities, but we were in Jordan. And we didn't know that he went into the hospital for 2 nights. Like my mom didn't tell us. We were going through our exam times. She did not want us to worry. He's had previously some heart problems and he was in and out of hospitals. So not that much. It was like very few of them. But I think because the timing was, this is the last week or 2 weeks before the end of the term. So she didn't tell us that he was in the hospital. Now, unbeknownst to me, those 2 days, I had suddenly felt so ill, not ill as in sickness, but as in complete sadness that I had no idea where it was coming from. And I even didn't go to my classes, and I stayed in my room, in my dorm, and I was like sad and crying, and I had no idea
Wow.
why I was upset. No idea. I was just like upset, very, very upset. And I kept, looking at myself. It's like, what's wrong? What is wrong? And the thing that confused me the most, and it confused me for so many years, is that not a single time during those 2 days that I was very upset, not a single time did I lift the telephone to call my dad, which is my usual go-to when I am upset.
Yeah.
So when I'm upset, I would, give him a surprise call at work, at home, either when I'm very happy or when I'm very sad or when I wanted money. So all of the above, right? And he would be the first one to come to mind. So during those 2 days, he did not come to my mind, not even once.
Huh.
And that will feed in later in my grieving process. I will not, it will come. I'll tell you what happened later, right? But then, because of this, and then he had his heart attack, the fatal one, and he died. He died within minutes, and so my mom knew, right, and my sisters knew, and within an hour or 2 hours, they've arranged our plane ticket for me and my sister to go. And my other sister, she called me and she said, "Dad is sick, right? And mom wants you here immediately. Your plane is at 6 p.m. That was the only plane, right, at that day."
And did your sister know, or did they tell her? Okay.
No. Okay. She said, "Your plane is at 6 p.m. You will be here tonight. Please do that immediately." So it's like, "Is everything okay?" She said, you just need to come tonight." Right? So then it was also a lucky time, because at that time we did not have cell phones. So she would call me at the dorm. It was just minutes before I left to my class. Minutes. I was in my shoes and ready to leave.
Yeah.
So I left and I went to my classes, and I spoke to all my teachers. I said, "I need to leave tonight." And I arranged it, and I moved. I was in a faraway city, and I had to drive back to the capital, Amman, to meet with my sister, and then we went to the airport together. So we had no idea. And then when we arrived, okay, so the first shock is like, okay, he's sick. But then in my head the whole time, I know that he was 66, right? So I know that my family has a heart problem. The men in my family, I expect for him to have a heart attack, but I was grateful that I get to say goodbye. I was like grateful. It's like, at least I could see him and tell him, how much I appreciate him. And so the idea didn't cross my mind that he was already dead. But I said, even if I didn't catch him in time, I will see him one last time. Right? That was what's going on in my head the whole day. And we arrived around 9 p.m. or something like that. My uncle comes to pick us up. And of course, he had a very, very long face. My uncle is my mother's, from my mother's side. And he had a very long face, but I assumed because he was upset. And I kept asking him in the car, how is my dad? And he said, with this heart attack that happened, water came into his lungs, and that becomes very hard. You cannot breathe after. I knew that when the water, comes to the lung, that it is deadly. I know that scientifically. Okay. But I said, okay, but he's still okay, right? And he was like, he didn't want to tell me. Yeah. And he was like, life and death is not in our hands. It's not something that we can, predict or remove, and you have to keep your faith up. You have to believe things will be okay. And meanwhile, so I am resisting this belief, and my sister was already into crying mode. She understood. I didn't. So she understood what was going on. I did not understand it. And I said, okay, take me to the hospital. He said the hospital is closed now. And I said, okay, tomorrow morning, when do they open? And he's like, oh, poor uncle. He's like, he doesn't know, what to answer me. And he's like, I'll take you as soon as you need to leave. Right? Mm-hmm. And I said, okay, good enough. So you're staying at home with us? He said, yeah, I'm going to stay at your house tonight. As soon as you want to leave, I will be there for you. So that was a very smart answer, by the way. So he didn't tell me yes, he didn't tell me no, but he didn't tell me anything. And I arrived there to see, as soon as I arrived home, I saw everyone was already crying. I still didn't get it. Right? Talk about your brain not functioning as fast. And it hit me when I entered the living room. So the living room was rearranged. And it was rearranged in a way that I knew it very well. That this is where, I mean, I'm a Muslim person, right? So we have 3 days of mourning when a person dies, and during those 3 days, the family will. It's not welcoming, but they open either their house or a specific place. Like you could go to another place that if you need to welcome people who are coming to give their condolences, right?
Right.
Immediately after the person is buried.
Oh.
Right? So they come and they basically, you don't prepare anything. They prepare everything for you. So the idea is that for you to do nothing, but not to be alone, that's one thing. And then everything else is taken care of. So with the right family members, and thank God we had, right family members, food was prepared for everyone. The house was cleaned. Everything was done. We didn't need to do anything but just sit there and mourn, our loss.
Right.
So when I saw the arrangements of the chairs to welcome a big number of people, that's when I realized it. Oh my God, that's when I realized it. And I was in complete shock. Number one, I just found out that he died. And number two, you buried him?
Oh my gosh. And that must have been really quick then.
It was like, so he died in the morning, 6 or 7, I think, 6 o'clock in the morning or 6:30, something like that. By 4 p.m. he was buried.
Wow.
Now, another. So here is something else. Later, when I woke up, like my rational mind was explaining. Yes, in the Muslim faith, you respect the dead by burying them. You don't want them to stay out longer. You need them, to sustain the body, to sustain the image, beautiful image in everyone else's mind. So you bury them, but you don't need to do it it's best to do it right after, but if you have circumstances when the daughter is not there, right? So immediately, you can wait. You can wait a day, you can wait 2 days, some people wait 3 days. It is not carved in stone that you have to bury immediately. It's just it is more respectful if you do that. So I found out that it was my uncle, not my father's brother, right? So from the father's side, he arranged for everything and he immediately took over. My mom was in complete shock from my dad passing away. It was unexpected, especially because she just took his shaving kit. Yeah. And she just blanked out. Yeah. Completely. She did not know what was going on. She did not know what was happening. She was in another zone. And so my uncle took over and of course telling her, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this, right? Mm-hmm. You're okay with that? And she was like, whatever you need. She wasn't in her complete focus. Okay. So he did it. Right. So that's what he did, right? Okay. And they arranged the funeral and they said the funeral was there were a lot of people, people immediately dropped everything to come and be with my dad during this last few moments. Except for me. I wasn't there, right? Right. And your sister, right? And my sister, exactly. So that feeds into the healing process later, that his effect on the people around him was as strong. So people they just found out that he died and they would just drop everything and then head over to this, to the cemetery. And it wasn't a very close by cemetery. And then just, be with him on those last moments. So this is what happened. 2 shocks in one day that completely changed my life.
Yeah. Wow. That sounds like it. I mean, I guess how was that for you then missing the funeral? Sometimes you hear about cases where maybe adults decide that some children are too young to attend a funeral, and I think that happened more in the past, but there's a lot of talk these days about how important it is for children to attend the funeral when it's possible.
I think so. I think it is very important. It brings closure.
Yeah.
I mean, my two other sisters, they saw him after he died, so they have this closure. They saw the end of it, right? I didn't. So it stayed in my head the whole time. What if? Why this? Why that?
Right.
So I was angry for a long time.
So how were the first few months or year, whatever that kind of first period? What was the hardest for you? What was that like for you in the beginning?
The hardest is that I had to go back and finish this damn term.
Okay.
And finish it, and I had to do a good job because that's what he expected me to do, and dealing with this like life as usual. I mean, the easy part, I think, is that I wasn't living in the same house, so I wasn't seeing him in every corner, as my mom and my two other sisters were, right? So I think it was harder for them. Okay. So the easy part is I was immediately out of that zone, and I was busy, and I was doing, finishing up what I needed to finish. The hard part is that, like, for me, I lost the center of my life. That was it. I lost the one person that I 100% trust. 100%. I don't think that there is a better word for, I trust you with everything. With my strength and with my vulnerability.
Right.
And I was angry. I was angry at my mom. I was angry at my uncle. I was angry at everyone, right? And this goes back to your grieving process, I didn't go into my acceptance until later, like 6 months after.
Well, okay, so what do you think then ultimately helped, with some of that anger, some of that grief, or what do you think helped you as you went forward?
I think, I mean, grieving wise, I think it took me a year. Anger, it took me also a year. I think, I was continuously trying to figure out, okay, what am I going to do with this information? Okay, what does this mean to me now? The person that I depended on, to share information, to share, tell me how do I think about life, how do I make decisions. I was just starting to become more mature. So suddenly, my campus just broke. Literally, my campus broke. And I have no direction of where to go. So the initial thing, okay, I finished my college, my first degree, and then said, okay, well, I'll just follow with whatever decision he already made, which is, immigrating to Canada. So we did that. I was already in that process. I already started a year before altogether. And I said to my dad, I'll just finish, this college, at least to have something in my hand. And then we'll go back to Canada.
Wait, Canada. Wait, how did Canada get involved here? So far I've heard Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Palestine. Where does Canada come from?
Yes, so Canada was 2 years in the making. It was a decision that my dad did. He was looking forward to retire, and he wanted, a place where he can enjoy a new life, a new adventure. He was, a person who cannot sit still. So he said, okay, what if we open an ice cream shop? These were some of his ideas and all that. So something that is easy, but it keeps him busy. So both Canada and the US were on his mind, as well as Europe, actually, because he was in Austria for 16 years when he studied there. But then I think the option of Canada was the best one for the family, according to the research that he did with my mom. So they decided to, to complete all the papers and then start the process of immigrating there. And we already traveled, I think, once or twice to Canada before he died. And the idea was within a year or two, when he retired, we'll just move there.
Okay.
So that's how I ended up in Canada at 23 20 and a half years, or 21 maybe, I think 21 years.
And just you, or your mom and your sisters too?
Well, we started slowly, right? So two of us first, me and a sister, and then another, and then my mom came.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. But within a year, I think we were all already there.
Okay.
And then, yeah, and I stayed there most of my adult life.
Okay. And so, do you think there was like a turning point for you in your processing of all this, or like where you felt your life shifted, or you could?
Yes, there was a turning point during the grieving process. During this 1 year,
Okay.
I realized that my dad didn't see the best of me, and he didn't get a chance to see what I was capable of, how I can use my stubbornness, to be better. And so I decided, I said, I'm going to show you. Whatever you are, you're looking at me, I'm going to show you that I am going to be better, and that I will work, in a different way, that I will see, and I will enjoy life. I will not be sad for long. I am angry, and I stayed angry for longer than I expected, but I am not going to be angry for long, and I'm not going to be just, helpless. I'll figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it turned me 180 degrees. And I know it's hard to say, but when my dad died, I became better. I became stronger. I was, more focused. I started to make better decisions. I started to look at, build my career in a different way, build my life in a different way. So yeah, and I think initially it was, the idea is, I will show you what I can do. I will make you proud of me.
Mm-hmm.
And even if you cannot tell me how much you're proud, but I can show you. So this was happening, during the day when I was out about and doing things and saying, this is for you, Dad. So that kept in my mind. And at the same time, I had a problem. I had a monster that's called anger that was building inside of me, because I was angry. How could you do this to me, right?
Right.
And so it took me a long time to figure things out. A year and 3 days after my dad died, my uncle, who's his brother, died. Right?
Okay.
And 6 months before that, my uncle, who was a brilliant man, a genius, I think he was a genius and very hardworking and very loving person, he had something in his brain that they didn't understand. Like, all the doctors did not understand what was it. Was it a tumor? Was it something? Well, he would suddenly zone off into old times. He would call my dad and his mom, and during their time in Palestine. And he basically lost his mind. And when we read, and he had a heart problem. He always was worried about dying from a heart problem, but he didn't die from a heart problem. It was his brain. And everything led to the conclusion that he went through a trauma that he couldn't get out of.
The trauma from his brother dying?
Yes.
From your dad?
Yes. My father was his only friend, his only brother, his only support, his everything. When he died, he had absolutely nothing else to help him and to support him. So my father's death actually killed my uncle. I could not be angry with him anymore. I could not be all the different things that happened during those 6 months. Of him, wondering, not knowing where he was, when he was, and all that, because it was just a 6-month period. It wasn't a disease. It wasn't something that he had for a long time. It was because of a sudden trauma that his brain couldn't handle it anymore.
Wow.
And so that was one of the biggest reasons why I forgave him and forgave myself. He couldn't have done it any otherwise. It killed him more than it killed me. Mm-hmm. It literally killed him, and he's a grown man. He's older than my father.
Okay.
So that was the thing. I also when you bring in your rational mind, sometimes, you also see why do people go through different, or why do people do different things in a different way. And I also saw what was going on in my mom's mind. Again, she did not know how to handle such a situation, because my dad usually takes care of all the sudden problems, right? All the immediate things. So she is strong on the long run. She was very strong on the long run. But at the moment, the shock was way too big.
Okay.
And again, that was another thing that helped me. And I had to release this anger, because that was stopping me. Once I released it, once I said, okay, I really forgive you both. There was nothing else that, like, you did it out of love. You did not do it because you wanted to harm anyone. You had something in your mind, and you were doing it because of that.
You're talking about your uncle with the funeral arrangements? Okay.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
My uncle, and my mom not telling me she could have told me that he went into the hospital 2 days before, and I could have called him. But then, Jenny, I was in a very horrible mood those 2 days, and I didn't even think of him. So it's on me as well. It's not on her, right? I had the feeling. I had a very, very strong feeling, unlike any other feeling that I had before, but I didn't act on it. So who am I to blame her when I could have done the same thing? Because my immediate reaction, if I feel very bad, I will just call her. And he didn't even come to mind for 2 days.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was another reason for me to say, you know what? It's like, I can't stay in this guilt, in this anger, in this. And then I grew up. It was then when I grew up and said, okay, fine, I am going to make these decisions. I'm going to keep him in my head. Whatever pieces of information he gave me, I'll try to reconstruct those and use it as my broken compass.
Yeah. Well, and earlier you said, I think you were going to circle back around about some of the lessons that you learned.
That was this is it. The idea that I was upset for 2 days. And I didn't know what, and I didn't act, and that actually helped with my healing process. That when I remembered that it was part of me. He was part of me. He reached out to me during his, time in the hospital, and I didn't listen.
Right.
And I wouldn't call myself then very intuitive, but that was a very intuition, like a strong intuition.
Yeah.
That a connection between me and him. But I didn't realize that I had then. So when I started to think about it, rationalize things, it's like I had the message. He was there. He did contact me in a different way. I didn't listen. So part of growing up was for me, number one, to realize that I had different ways of communicating that I wasn't aware of. And then I need to bring back my intuition. So I worked on that a lot.
Ah, okay. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Have you had, now I think a number of years have gone by. Have you had other experiences with grief since then? And how did that compare?
Yes. So 2 years ago, 20 years after my dad died, a heart attack killed my father-in-law. And that was very, very sudden. He did not have a heart problem. He was a very strong man. He was, walking or about to go out, actually getting ready to go out, and suddenly he had a heart attack. And within 15 minutes, I don't think they even had a chance to do anything. 15 to 30 minutes. It was the first one and then the second one. So when my father-in-law died, again, my husband, he found out by phone. His uncle called him. He said, you need to come. His father lives in Jordan, right? Again, back and forth to Jordan. So his father lives in Jordan. We are right now in the UAE. So his uncle calls him. He's like, you need to come immediately to see your dad. I don't know if you will be able to catch him. By that time, he wasn't sure that he will be able to catch him, but within 10 minutes he was dead, right? But they didn't know that at that time. So he arranged to go again same day. He traveled at night, and of course he knew that he was dead before he left, because he knew within half an hour, right?
Okay.
Now here's the thing. So when my father-in-law died, I said, I know this process, I know this grieving, I know what's going to happen next. So I immediately pulled out my notebooks. Yes, and the books that helped me, because I read a number of books about grieving, as well as, where does the soul go after, all that. So I had some idea, because I was curious. So I immediately told my husband, who was not ready. But I told him, I know you're not ready, but this is part of the process. This is what's going to happen, and this is what you need to focus on now. Okay. Just forget about the rest. So I was, when a cat falls and it lands on its feet.
Yeah.
That's what happened. I just landed on my feet, because I knew what was he going to go through.
Okay.
Now, and he went through it. And I said, okay, this starts now, second, third, and all that. And he went through it. I think 6 months or 8 months after. Oh no, 6 months after, he was in his, accepting stage. So he is figuring out, okay, it is what it is. We could not have saved him. He had, nobody was around him, or few people were around him, but because no one was in that area. So anyway, no one is upset from anyone else, right? So they went through this anger very, very quickly. And then he started to move on. And that's when I completely, out of sudden, crashed.
Oh, interesting.
And I did not know why.
Huh.
And I went into deep, deep depression for 5 months. So that's 8 months after he died, after my father-in-law died. Which I loved him. This is why the love comes. So 8 months after he died, I went into deep depression for 5 months, and I did not know where was this coming from. Like, I know I was already sad. That's it. Like, but I did not grieve him properly. It bottled up. So the effect was way harsher than anything I've ever experienced in my life. So as a kid, I was much more resilient. I was very much more resilient losing my own father than when I was an adult in my 40s, losing my father-in-law. It was another father figure who I loved very much, and who wasn't like as close to me as my own dad, but still very close. And then suddenly his loss, I thought I was, I thought I grieved. I did not grieve. I was just sad for a few days. I was like very sad for a few days. And then I said, okay, I need to be strong for my husband, because he did not go through this again. I don't want him to grieve for a full year like I did, and be angry like I did. And he did not. But then I crashed after, and I did not see that coming. And it took me 5 months to realize, that I was in a very deep depression mode that required professional help. I could not get out of it. And B, that when we dug very, very deep, I did not know what was going on. Like my work was going fine, my friends were good, I was healthy, my kids are healthy, like everything was working fine. Why was I depressed? Where is it coming from? And then everything was put back into the point when he actually died, and I lost my father-in-law, and I did not feed that into my everyday life like I did with my own father.
Okay.
So I think kids are way much more resilient than adults. They adapt to change faster. They do get upset. It's stronger on them, but then they have a life to look forward to. We benefit from something called, forgetting how sad you are, or forgetting the impact, unless you keep repeating it to yourself. And this is where anger feeds anger. So if you either train yourself or figure out a way to repeat the stories that support you rather than the stories that upset you, then you move way faster.
Ah.
Yeah.
Okay. If you could say one thing to your younger self, what would you say now, going back and thinking about your experience?
I wish I was. I mean, I cannot. Again, I cannot be saying wishful things that I know I wasn't ready for. Then I wish I had spent more time with him, with my dad. I had the option of spending more time with him. I chose to spend more time with my friends, but I can't be upset. I was a teenager. That's what you do, right? So that was something that like, this is something I wish I knew before. I think now I am trying to enjoy the people that I love right now at the moment, not waiting, not thinking, oh, what will happen when we are separated, or what will happen when we are no longer together, or so and so. Like, let's just enjoy it right now. Let's figure out the best way we can have fun. I know it sounds very funny, but if you really enjoy someone, tell them, I enjoy being with you. I enjoy looking at your face. I enjoy calling you, or thank you for this. Just these. And I try to capture those images, like people smiling, people looking back at me, after they just left, and then looking back. People who are, by people I mean those who are close to me, those who I really enjoy. And I tell, sometimes I do this mistake of telling my kids, when I'm no longer here, you're going to miss this. But I don't think it's a very good advice to tell them, because now they're worried. Like, why wouldn't you be? And it's like, no, don't worry. You'll figure it out. You'll figure it out. That I think this is a message, like trusting that you will find a way, but you have to want to find a way. Like, you really have to find the motivation to prove that you can do it. You can enjoy life. You will make something to make yourself and the people that you love proud.
Yeah. Well, this has been great. I have just a couple more questions here, if that's all right.
Of course.
If you could talk to your dad now, what would you say to him?
Oh, I talk to my dad. I do. I do talk to him all the time. Sometimes when I'm awake, sometimes when I'm asleep. And years ago, I actually he came into my dreams, and he was telling me the things that I didn't want to hear. But I think talking with him, I use it as part of before making a decision. So if I want to make something, I'll say, okay, well, what would you do? What should I do? Or what do you think the best way to look at it? I don't get immediate answer, because I didn't know my father when I was mature enough. I knew him as a child who would just give me love. He wasn't giving me advice of things to work on my, to work it out myself. So I try to ask the people who know him. So I try to say, if this is something that a question that I would ask my dad, I would ask my cousins, who grew up around him. So, what would he say? And they would know what would he say, but they would tell me a story that maybe I could learn from it, because my older cousins knew him as mature people, right? They were older adults, and so they had different experiences with him. So I think these are the things that I try to go back to his, I would say, to his legacy. I try to think the way that he thinks. And I try to find, what was he interested in? I don't know, like, how would he see life as we are living today? It's very much different than the one in the 90s, right? He died in end of 97, so it was very different. So yeah, try to strip it down to the basic and see how would he see it, and then go on from there. I don't know if I answered your question, but this is something I always struggle with, like, because I always ask his advice up until now. It's not something that I wish I had asked before.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And you mentioned older cousins and things, and I'm wondering if there's anything that maybe your mom or other family members did particularly well that was helpful to you in the early, as you were grieving and adjusting and so forth?
Because I went back to school, so I was away from my mom and actually all my sisters, because I was in a different city. So I wasn't around my immediate family other than by phone, right? Mm-hmm. So that wasn't a strong influence. I think I realized who my real friends are then. When when a friend of mine heard, the news again, he dropped everything and came just to see me and see, do you need anything? Is there anything? I'm here for you. And when I say he dropped everything, I mean, he traveled like 2 hours just to see me for 10 minutes and then went back and then drove back. Right. Yeah. So that was something. I had a number of friends who did that. Those are the friends that actually stayed with me now, 20 years after. Mm-hmm. And so, so that shows you the real people in your life when you go through these things. It's not when you have a happy time. It's when you actually have a really stressful time. What do they do? It could be just a phone call. It really could be a phone call. I lost friends because they couldn't pick up the phone to tell me that, they're sorry for my loss, which is very, very shallow, but it is what it is. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So I think, friends was the thing that really helped me, and staying busy. Staying busy, not just for the sake of being busy, for the sake of accomplishing a goal. I wanted to finish this degree. I wanted to continue his decision moving to Canada. I wanted to start a life. And it's funny, as soon as I moved to Canada, I was like, I need out of here. It's too cold. And I started to create my own adventure. And my own adventures, going to Italy, going to different places. That's another story for another podcast. But then I saw my life in a different way. Yeah, right. So it is the people who you surround yourself with, those who say, okay, you can do it, and you're up to it. That same sentence that he kept telling me at the beginning.
Yeah. And just as an aside, did you move to Montreal then?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we all moved to Montreal.
Nice.
And I stayed there. Like, I don't know, 10, 15, something like this, before I moved with my, then I also had my family in Montreal. I got married, had my first child, and then we moved to Toronto for work.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I'm actually going to be in Montreal this summer. It's been my first time visiting, so I'm looking forward to that.
You should. It's an amazing city. It's my favorite.
Yeah, cool. That's cool. I think we just finish up with one last question. If you could say one thing to adults, parents who might have a grieving child in their life, or a teenager or a college student, what would you say to them?
I grieved very differently than my mom. And I think in a way she expected me to grieve like she did not expect, she didn't say anything, but in general, people assume that you all grieve the same way. And not because I am out and doing things and having fun and you see me jumping and smiling that I'm not grieving, right? It's just my way. I think a parent should tell, their children that it is a process, and they are going to go through these different stages. And it's very normal. They're not the only ones. Everyone else will go through it. And give them a big, but, is that they could do it their own way. They don't have to grieve the same way that you as a parent sorry. You don't have to do it the same way as you are doing it. And you don't have to do it the same way as you see it written being done by others, right? You will have your own way. Just know that it is a phase, like any other phase, like having, going through teenage years, like figuring out how to ride your bicycle, all these are just phases until you reach the end of it. So what will happen at the end of it will be different. And then there is an example. I know they use it for work, but I think it's a good example, is that you could be, okay, if you bring an egg an egg and a carrot and some coffee beans, right? And then you put them into boiling water. Each one will be completely transformed in a different way. The carrot that was hard will be very soft. The egg that was fragile will be hard, and the coffee beans will transform into liquid and a beautiful smell. Hopefully, if you like coffee,
yeah.
Right?
Oh yes.
So
I'm
it
from
is.
Seattle. I have to like coffee.
There you go. So it is. I think I learned this at that time, and it is your choice which one you want to be. You can, if you are a carrot and you used to be strong, and I've had people who were very strong, and then suddenly when I saw them very strong as teenagers, and then when they became adults, they are like indecisive, very dependent, and they're not sure. So they became like a carrot. They became very soft. Something happened that shifted the way that they see life, and now they are very afraid of it. And then some people, when they go through hardship is the boiling water, they become, they think that they become stronger, but they become, they just cover their heart, like they don't open up. They become, I'm strong and you cannot enter, and they become this egg, So to the outside, it's a strong shell, but inside you're still afraid, and you're just, you're not being honest with yourself. You're detaching. And I think I chose to be the coffee. I chose to be different. I chose to transform from beans to liquid and to have nice smell. And actually, that's one. My name, Randa, is an Arabic name, and it was my dad who named me. No one else. Actually, when he named me, he went to the registrar at that time, not knowing what name he will have. And my mom just told him, you choose the name as long as it doesn't start with an R.
Uh-oh.
Because my two other sisters had a name that started with an R, so that was her only reason.
Okay.
And then he went to the registrar and he named me Randa, and then she was like, an R? And she's like, well, Randa is a beautiful name, and one of the meaning is an Arabic name. One of the meaning is like it's a small bush that grows in the desert, so it's very rare, and it has a flower with a very nice smell. So for me, this name is very important, A, because I like this name, and B, because he named me this name. No one else named me. I have no idea what was going on in his mind from the time that he left the hospital to go to the registrar and decide for a name for me. He made this decision, throughout this journey. It could have been before, in his head. I knew that other names were suggested to him by my uncle, but he didn't name that. So I chose this because of this idea of having a nice smell that, I can link it back to the name that my dad gave me. So I choose to be the coffee. I choose to transform in a way that is happy and is fulfilling its destiny, and I am actually sharing my happiness with others. So the others don't need to be, you need to fully that's not the right word. When you are grieving or when you are sad, you need to fully be in that process, right? So be sad when you are sad, be upset, be angry, but then figure out a way to go through this transformation, to go through this boiled water, and then get out, coffee in the end.
I love
Drink
that.
it.
Yeah.
Drink yourself.
I'm going to have to remember that. I guess it's a metaphor?
I think it's used in
the
business analogies. Yeah, it's used in business analogies, something like, or in life analogies. I don't know. I heard it during that time, and I chose to be the coffee.
Yeah, well, I haven't heard it before, so thank you for sharing that with me. I
No
love that.
problem.
And I hope that's useful to people. And I think that is a great place to end. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Jenny.
My guest today is Randah Taher, who's joining us all the way around the world from Dubai. And Randah lost her dad when she was in college, and so we're very glad to have her come today and share her reflections on her journey and her experience. So thank you so much, Randah, for speaking with me today.
Thank you, Jenny. Thank you for your time. I really appreciate it.
I hope you enjoyed my interview with Randah Taher as much as I did. You can find show notes and all the links at widowedparentpodcast.com. Look for episode 20. And if you haven't had a chance yet to get the free guide that I put together, please head over to my website, jennylisk.com/top10. That's JENNYLISK.com/top10 and download a copy. I decided that 20 episodes into hosting the Widowed Parent podcast that it was a good time to step back and reflect on what I've learned so far about widowed parenting. I identified 10 things I've learned and included them in the guide, and also included quotes from my guests and identified which episode they're from so you can go back and listen. I've also been going on Facebook Live and Instagram Live each day to share a little more about each topic. I just recorded day 7, so you can catch the last 3 in the coming days, or go back and listen to the ones I've already posted. You can find me on Facebook at jenny.lisk, or on Instagram at @liskjenny. Thanks for listening. Until next week, keep smiling.
Thank you for listening to the Widowed Parent Podcast with your host, Jenny Lisk. Connect with us on social media and at widowedparentpodcast.com.